Hello and welcome to Face to Face. My name is Godfred Akoto-Boafo. Our guest today on Face to Face is one of the most venerated politicians in the history of this country. A man who has risen from being a TDC member at the age of 21, a three-time member of parliament for his hometown, and also the longest-serving general secretary of the main opposition party in Ghana, the National Democratic Congress. Asiedu Nketia, also known as General Mosquito, but before then known as Heavyweight, is our guest on Face to Face. General, welcome to Face to Face.
Thank you very much.
You used to be Heavyweight. When did you become Mosquito?
Oh, well, it's a long story. I earned the title Heavyweight when I was in the Consultative Assembly. That wrote the Constitution.
For 1992?
The 1992 Constitution.
Okay.
So I used to preface my presentation with the phrase that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to add my weight to the motion on the floor and things like that. So then I remember Honorable Akua Densua was a reporter for Spectator, Ghanaian Times. So she wrote an article and said that this MP who always adds his weight, I guess is about 50 kilos. So 50 kilo weight, when you add it to a motion, what does it add to the motion? So after that, people took special interest and they always called me Heavyweight. I think it was maybe an indication of how powerful some of my presentations were. And so I earned that name, Heavyweight. And people like the current chairman of the Council of State, Nana Otu Esribo, was there. Togbe Ajatapo was there. Sajifo Kuntunkun Kudachim, and many big chief. Of course, the Chanapio was the speaker, and then the chief of Kalio, Na Banamini Sando, was also a member. Nana Kwaminchi of Central Region, I guess he was the president of the Central Regional House of Chiefs, and then so many of them. So because of that, I was launched into some new phase of my political life, such that I knew people across the country, right, because of my participation in the Consultative Assembly.
Oh, okay. But those were exceptional highs for a young man who could have been a cocoa farmer.
Sure.
You're from Sekwa?
Yes, I'm from Sekwa. And I was born into a cocoa farming family. And I keep on saying that I almost lost the opportunity to have education because my uncles were very rich cocoa farmers, and they thought that they should keep me to inherit the farms. And so it was because of the F-Cube launched by Kwame Nkrumah that I had the opportunity of going to school, because I was picked on the street when all my age mates were in school. And in those days, it was really F-Cube, free and compulsory. Okay? Compulsory because once everything is free, if a parent refuses to send their ward to school, then it constitutes a crime for which those parents could be prosecuted. So I was picked on the streets, and then my parents and uncles were threatened with prosecution. And that's why I went to school. And from class 1 to whatever, I mean, they discovered that I was an exceptionally brilliant child. So I kept topping the class throughout.
And that kind of limelight seemed to follow you, because at age 21,
yes,
you became virtually the big man in Sekwa. You were the de facto political leader in Sekwa. How did that happen?
Sure. Even though my uncles agreed to take me through basic education, when I completed, that was the end. So I had to struggle doing odd jobs and so on to be able to write the teacher training admission exams, and then I got it through the first touch. I got it by age 20, between 20 and 21, I had qualified as a certificate A teacher. And so there happened to be some litigation in my community, and we were looking for persons who could be neutral to run the affairs of the town. So I actually was drafted from wherever I was teaching. I was teaching in a village in German district called Nketia. Okay. So my people gathered and drafted me back, and then we constituted the town development committee, the equivalent of a unit committee now. So that was the first time that I had to contest election, because of the chieftaincy problems. They had to actually organize elections with community members voting, and I was made to contest as the secretary, and so I then became the de facto leader of the town.
Were you interested in the politics of the time?
No. I hadn't thought about politics. That was before the revolution. This happened in the later days of 78. Okay. And so after I had been made the de facto ruler of my community, in fact, all the chiefs were set aside, and the district chief executive at that time decided to be the chairman of the committee, even though he was living about 40 miles away in Wenchi. So I was both the chairman and the secretary of the newly elected committee, and both sides agreed that they should accord me the necessary respect. So I took charge of organization of communal labor and all that, and so gradually we were able to put the community together and turn the attention from the chieftaincy to development. And that's how come we're able to make, undertake very, very important projects in town. It was during that time that we established the Sekwa Weekly Market, which as we speak now is one of the largest markets in the region, if not in the country. And so we did some work by way of provision of water through some excavation of some dugouts to collect rainwater and all that. There were a lot of things that with the cooperation of the community we were able to undertake. In actual fact, our road from Sekwa to Brekum was in a very bad shape. We were able to organize communal labor to fill potholes over all this stretch and clear the sides of the road and so on, because it was some newfound enthusiasm that had been brought on board. They've gone through about 6 years at that time of chieftaincy litigation, and nothing was happening. So when my committee was put together and I was brought as some neutral person, I just needed to organize a gong to be beaten and everybody would come on board. And they had been warned by the district chief executive that whoever defied my committee would be punished as the one who is instigating the conflict. So by the grace of God, within some 2-3 years, the chieftaincy issue had died its natural death. There was no court that settled the matter. And so we were able to establish a weekly market, and on the commissioning inauguration date, the chief for the first time rode in the palanquin. And then he indicated that, well, now he can die and have a good story to tell the ancestors. And that was the last time the chief rode in the palanquin, and he passed on.
Wow. But what was the attraction for you towards the PNDs? Was it a matter of course? Was it easy for you because they were there? Or genuinely you felt the ideologies were aligned?
No, as I said, I became secretary to the town development committee before the revolution. Then in the course
that.
of my being the TDC chairman, then this was getting to the later part of 78. Then June 4th came, and then we all started mobilizing around it and so on. So June 4th actually, if I would say, gave me even more powers, because President Chairman Rawlings in Accra was also calling for the organization of self-help activities, communal labor, evacuation of cocoa, and all things like that. So it fed very well into my agenda. So it was like we all moved along. Then briefly, during the time I was still the TDC secretary, then the elections of 79 also came. During which time I joined the UNC. UNC was like a third force group between PFP, which represented this current MPP, and then the PNP, which was a CPP wing. The UNC positioned itself in the middle, so we attracted both the UP loyalists, some loyalists of UP and some loyalists of CPP. So you have the likes of Pa Willie being our flag bearer. He was one of the big six. I think he's the uncle also of our current president. So he was our flag bearer, and I think the current president was also in our group. And then we had Professor Adubwa Hines and all those guys, and Afrifa was also there, and Alhaji Idrisu Mahama, the current vice chairman of my party's Council of Elders. He was the running mate, and Pawuli was the flag bearer. And so Obeda Samoa, Harry Sawyer, Hawa Yakubu, and all those people were part of the UNC. And I was a constituency organizer at that time.
It looks like this group of yours was like a melting pot of what would become the future MPP and NDC.
Precisely, because it was intended to be a third force between the UP and the CPP group. And so that was when I started my politics, because I was recruited into the UNC because people saw my achievements as a secretary to the town development committee. So anybody who was introducing his party there, of course, will want young men who can, campaign for them, whose opinions matter in the community. So naturally, I was out. But that place happened to be within Professor Buzier's district. Yeah. Okay. But there were some difficulties in selecting the parliamentary candidate for the PFP that represented the UP tradition. And so because of that, people in my hometown decided to migrate towards the UNC. And then some of them were with the third force. It was looking back, you see that, I don't know, God decided that I should be the first MP to hail from Sekwa, because Lawyer Obimanu at that time could easily pass as a presidential candidate. He was highly sought for everywhere. He was with the PFP. Then somewhere after the General Kufu coup d'etat, General Kufu replaced Kutua Champong, and then decided to abandon the Unigov idea, and then decided to establish a constituent assembly to draw a new constitution based on multi-party and so on. So around that time, everybody felt that Akufu was unwinding all the wrong things that Achampon regime had done. So they thought that we could all keep quiet and follow to get elections based on multi-party. But my uncle Obimanu would not be silenced. He still felt that what he hated was military regime. So whether it is Achampo or Akufu or anybody, will continue talking. So he continued the attack on the Akufu regime. So he was arrested at a time where parties had been formed and were all waiting to go into election. Then he was arrested and detained together with Dr. Bilson and co. And he had started the cells of the party in our community. He had introduced all these big men in our community and we were all campaigning for them. Then he returned from prison and came propagating a different ideology altogether. Because he had been in prison with Dr. Belson, who came out and then declared that they were forming a third force party with a lantern as their symbol. So Obimanu decided to convert us into a new party when he had already introduced us to the UP group. So everything my chiefs did to try to convince him to remain loyal with the UP group failed. And then our people also said that, well, we are in Buzia's district. So it will be very difficult for anybody, any new party to win elections here. And even if you are bringing CPP, that is not as bad as introducing some new party which is not known by anybody. So we couldn't follow him. You understand? Yes. So that was the beginning point, the dynamics. So he still persisted with his third force party and got a chunk of the voters in our area. Then after the PFP had failed to convince him to just go and take the parliamentary ticket without any contest, then PFP also decided that J.K. Amankwa, who had contested during Buzia's term, who was the MP during Buzia's term, he was their second choice, so he should get the chance to go to parliament. But J.K. Amankwa also comes from Badu, you know. So it was, several people also felt that, why is it that several communities and it's only Badu people who will be going to parliament? That being the case, let us get another intellectual and use him and as a rallying point. So we went in for one Dr. Amo, who was a statistics lecturer in UST, who hails from Sekwa. So we brought him and he introduced the UNC idea. So half the rest of the community who disagree with the third force also rallied behind Dr. Amo and then campaigned for the UNC, and that was where I was made the constituency organizer for the first time.
Fantastic. Let's fast forward a bit. Now, you went into parliament on the ticket of the NDC for Wenchi East.
Wenchi West.
Wenchi West.
Yes.
How was that for you?
Well, I became like, because of my communal spirit, you know. So by the time we finished writing the constitution, I was like a household name in the whole district, both Wenchi East and Wenchi West and so on. So it was the political parties, when they started, the three main political parties started chasing me to accept to be their candidate. Okay.
So there's sort of a recruitment process for you could choose.
Yes. But I had been a cadre under the revolution, you know. But whilst being a cadre, it was a long story. At some point, I left and went to university and did my BSc administration and so on. And subsequently, I was working in Accra at one of the branches of Gihok as a marketing, manager. Then things turned around. The chief had died and a new person was being installed. So he happened to be my schoolmate. So he came to the Gihok and then convinced me to resign to go and help the community establish a rural bank. So that was what took me back to my community. And we established this rural bank and it was very prosperous from the beginning with several branches all over. And it happened that the communities where my operations were covering, fell somehow within the Wenchi West constituency later when it was created. So I was a known figure there already. And I had also been an assemblyman, for the area. And one of the powerful members of the assembly, the Wenchi District Assembly, and it was based upon this assembly that elected me onto the consultative assembly. I won the election in the whole district to be their representative on the consultative assembly. So by the time, and then my performance at the assembly too was being monitored and so on. So by the time the consultative assembly work was over, it was like everybody felt that, no, this person can be an MP. So that's how come the parties started running after us. So it was a difficult choice because around that time too, I had left the rural bank and had secured a new employment in Accra here. And were among the first trained stockbrokers in Ghana.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
So because of that.
Do you still follow the markets?
I don't follow the market any longer. So because of that, by the time parties were ready to select candidates, I had a very difficult choice to make. Because it happened that the training course we did at the stock exchange, I also topped that course. So I was given some certificate framed in gold and all that. So it meant that every stock broking firm wanted my name to be attached to their firm so they can get market. And just around this time, my community started sending emissaries that, look, this time somebody must come from my community, to parliament. And that I am the obvious choice. In fact, when I was leaving, it wasn't easy at all. My MD and all the others were almost in tears. But eventually,
what swayed it for you?
I consulted a pastor from my hometown. We are not blood relations, but everybody knows that he's my senior brother because I never took decisions without consulting him. Reverend Janvia, who was then the synod clerk of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. So I consulted him. We held discussions and I said that, well, if your community needs you today and you refuse to go, next time you will need them. When you go there, nobody will mind you. So whatever opportunities you have here, just abandon them to go and serve. And I was like, you have big intellectuals from the community of Imanu is there, you Reverend Janvia, you are there, one NK Jomo and many others. And yet I'm always the only person who is pushed to go and do community service. I thought they were disrupting my career. But after all that, I listened to advice and went back. So that's how where I entered this full-time politics. So when I went, it was easy, because all the three main parties, they were all saying that, Asiedu Nketia will be our candidate in all their campaigns throughout the place. So when I went, I only needed to tell them that I am in NDC. So that deflated the campaigns of all the other political parties. And I virtually did not campaign. I just won with close to 80%. This my 80% has followed me all over.
You are watching Face to Face, I must say, with the General Secretary of the NDC, Asiedu Nketia. And we've spent the first part of the show getting to know the man. A lot of you just know him as a contemporary politician, but he's proven to us that he goes way back. And it turns out he was a bit of a precocious kid in school, from what he's told us. Keep watching this. When we get back, we will talk about the NDC. Yes, the modern day NDC. And the way forward for the party that he administers. Keep watching Face to Face.
For regular news checks as they unfold, 2020 news all day, all the time. Politics, sports, entertainment, business, and more. 2020 news. We bring you the world in 20 minutes.
Welcome back to Face with Johnson Asiedu Nketia, General Secretary of the NDC. So, General, you served 3 terms in Parliament.
Yes, 12 years.
One would have thought you'd have gone to retire, but your party brought you back to administer the party, and you've been in charge since.
Yes.
What, are there any significant differences between the party you took over in 2005 and the party you run now in 2019?
Before I come to that, you see that as we continue with my life story, many of the things I got engaged in were like things that were imposed on me, sort of.
Yeah.
Now, after I've done 3 years also in Parliament, 12 years, I decided that that was enough for me. So in actual fact, I decided not to contest again. Against all pressures. Alhaji Hudu Yaya, then the General Secretary, said, no, our assessment here indicates that you are a star MP, one of our best performers, so we can't allow you to leave. My community too, the constituency, felt that, well, they couldn't allow me to leave. Interestingly, the constituency executives of the New Patriotic Party actually sent delegation to my house with 1 crate of Guinness to plead with me not to leave as an MP, and that they were prepared to even vote skirt and blouse to support me, because around that time, that was when President Kufuor had created my constituency as a new district, and they felt that they needed experienced hands to manage the teething problems of the district. So with me in Parliament would be good for them. And I said that I had done my consultations and I have taken a decision that I wasn't going to Parliament any longer. Because I had operated, I started from the back bench of government, came to front bench of government, then also came to back bench of opposition, and then front bench of opposition. So there wasn't anything there interesting there for me to learn again. So I felt that, no, let me abandon this and then do something else. Around that time, my wife was in Canada, so I had decided that, look, I will leave and then join her. But when I left, then my colleagues in Parliament came together. I remember Right Honorable Ajaho, John Mahama at that time, Honorable E.T. Mensah, Honorable 13 of them came together and said that, look, we are in opposition and the party seems to be in disarray. And that time, 3 main factions were easily discernible on the front of NDC. You saw Dr. Obeda Samuel leading one faction, exchanging insults and with our founding father, who was also leading another faction. And then Professor Tamels was somewhere in between. So there were about 3 factions. So the group in Parliament was about the only group that was united. So they came together and said that, look, we should find a strong general secretary who can unite the party. Otherwise, we should forget, the future elections. In actual fact, I have heard stories about President Rawlings sponsoring me to become general secretary, or Atamils or Obed sponsoring me to become general secretary. It's none of those. The actual people who pushed me into that work was the names that my colleagues in Parliament, and the names I have mentioned. Dan Abudakwi was part of it, and Collins Dauda. They were of the opinion that they have some belief that, if I became general secretary, things could change. So eventually I accepted, and then, but the election, the contest was not without drama. You saw what happened. So in Koforidua happened to be one of the, if I would say, the most violent gatherings of NDC ever. When I had emerged as the general secretary, we defeated Dr. Samoa, and his group were defeated. So immediately from that place, there was announcement of defection of the previous leadership of the party, and then they formed a new party and so on. So we were left with about half of the party to manage with. But gradually, we were able to, bring people on board, reorganize the party, and by the grace of God, within 4 years, we were in power.
You've had highs and lows. Mm-hmm. You've won elections, you've lost elections.
Yes.
Which election was the most difficult for you as general secretary?
I don't understand the most difficult as you talk about, but I think that the 2008 contest,
the one that got President Mills.
Yes, it was a very difficult, very eventful election, because that was my first election as a general secretary, and you had an incumbent party to defeat, and so it was very, very difficult. And at that time, there were all indications that the government at that time wanted to exploit the incumbency to the maximum, including influencing the security services and all that. But it somehow didn't work. We planned, there were threats of this vigilantism and things like that, and people urging us to also organize a counter-vigilante and so on. We said no, we'll beat them with intelligence, so we will not organize anything. And lo and behold, because of the way our campaign went, we actually won the elections in all the military barracks. And when we won in the special voting too, among the police service and so on, I said, then these people are naked, because these are the people who control the security. And so we didn't have to organize any vigilante or anything. But thanks to the nationalism, in particularly our armed forces, they stood their grounds and made sure and resisted all attempts by the incumbent government to use them to
Were there attempts?
influence the elections, but it didn't work.
There were attempts?
Oh, sure. There were several attempts, but it didn't work. And so we won the elections, but you know how it went. In fact, when we could have won that election easily, but because of the incumbency things, it had to go virtually 3 rounds. First round, we were trailing behind Nanando. Nanando had, I think, 49%, and we had 48 or so thereabouts. So we went, but we had won, we had captured Parliament already, so we went for the second round, And it was clear that we had won the second round after close of polls. But when collation was taking place, then we started in the strong room, we started receiving new pink sheets for areas that have been, whose result had been declared already. So an alarm was raised that no, something was happening, So it was later we realized that some group of persons left Accra in a plane to Kumasi to try and manufacture new results for certain constituencies in the center of Kumasi. And maybe they didn't know that those results, the original results, had been faxed to the strong room already. And so the new result sheets started coming in. And so our people raised alarm that no, there was an attempt to rig. And so that led to the drama, suspension of collation and all that. Eventually, the following day or so, we continued with the collation. And Time, my constituency.
Yes, the famous Time.
The famous Time.
You went back to Time to oversee things yourself.
Yes, but because of these incumbency things, they managed to frustrate the voting in Time. So Time did not participate in the second round at all. And this was, this was done purposely because the regional minister and then the other people there vowed that there would not be elections in Time because they sought to disagree with the first round results of Time and so on. So election didn't take place in the second round in Time. So after we were able to frustrate these attempts at rigging here, and we were demanding that the Electoral Commission should declare the results for us because we were leading marginally by about 30-something thousand votes. Then the Commission's position now was that Time did not vote, but the number of registered voters in Time exceeded the margin of victory that we had chalked. So we needed to go back to Time and hold another election before we could eventually declare the winner. Because Time was, the total number of registered voters was more than 50,000, and we had won by 30-something thousand. So theoretically, if all of them voted for one party, it could tilt the balance. So that's how come we went to Time. Somehow, because the name had changed from Wenchi West to Time, following the creation of the district. Many Ghanaians didn't know that they were going into the constituency of the General Secretary. So I declared to them here that I'm taking the lead. They should come and meet me in my backyard and I'll teach them politics. So I quickly went back and organized, and I wasn't surprised that when voting was about to start, MPP had to pull out because there was no inch of space where they could convince anybody that they would be able to win. They were being hooted at all over the place in all the villages. So they had to leave. President Kufuor and Nana Akufo-Addo had come as far as to Wenchi. And they held meetings in Buzia's residence, disagreed among themselves, and abandoned the elections and went back to Accra. And so that's how come we won
that particular
Time,
election.
and then we were declared winners. So that was the most difficult election.
But 2016, you lost that election in power. And a lot of people associate that image of you standing there with your red headband during that press conference. What went wrong in 2016 for the NDC?
I don't remember addressing this
press
conference with my red head.
No, you were standing beside the person who was addressing the press conference in your fugu.
Well, the red headbands were used during the 2008 elections and so on. So somehow they can replicate them and so on. 2016, I was. You remember the golf club?
Yes,
when people. Yeah, that was
that
it.
You had turned around.
Yeah, that was it.
That is that is the image people associate with that NDC defeat. For a lot of people, it's a lasting image of General Mosquito.
Oh, why? So why is it that the same people who associate me with the defeat will turn around to give me more than 80%, endorsement at my re-election? So it was clear that maybe if anybody wanted to create the impression of, putting the blame for the defeat on one person, it was not justified. That's why, because the party knew better.
Mm-hmm. But in the run-up to the recent elections, were you worried?
About what?
For a lot of people, they felt this was the first time you had actively even campaigned in a long time as General Secretary to your own delegates. They felt you were feeling the pressure of the competition at that time.
Oh, in this past elections,
just this recent one.
Yes, I did go round. I went round because of the amount of falsehood that was being spewed out there. And I got the impression that it had an active collaboration with this ruling party to try to do me in when their thinking was like, if we are able to deal with Asiedu Nketia, then the 2020 becomes easier. So there were forces allied with my competitor. Wherefore, I will not be able to know whether it was with his collaboration. But it was very clear that MPP had joined the campaign as if they had some interest at stake. So, and the type of lies and falsehood that was being spread, I felt that it was important to also go around and explain to people, and the message sang wonderfully.
And in returning you, a few months later, the party also returned the former president, Dramani Mahama.
Sure.
Is that a decision the party is confident in?
Very confident in, because, look, if you go to the field, not many people in the grassroots believe that we lost this election.
But what were these people? Did they vote?
Not many because they voted, but they don't believe. You see, going into elections, there are those who cast the vote, and there are those who count, and there are those who declare winners. So there are a lot of things between you having convinced the electorate to vote for you, and then you becoming a president or an MP. There are a lot of things that can go wrong along the line. So when you lose elections, it is not always it doesn't always have a strong correlation with your acceptability or your popularity. There are things that can go wrong. So you see, we've lost elections before. The elections that we lost in 2004 under President Kufuor. In fact, the 2000 elections that we lost, 7 or 8 months after that electoral defeat, nobody could speak on radio stations in Brong Ahafo on behalf of NDC. And even if you are driving in town, you fear to even identify yourself as NDC. So you saw that the mood of the population was for a change, and they got the change. So we were like non-entities, sort of. Of course, it was fueled also by the propaganda, trying to paint us with the brush of thieves and all that. But this election, the day after our defeat, when I was driving through Accra, I was still being cheered. And if you are going to lose elections and you drive through Ghana, you feel the sense of defeat coming. This was not like that. That is why the party has been able to bounce back that quickly. Because...
You believe it has bounced back?
Sure. If elections were held today, MPP will not be in government.
You are certain of this?
I am telling you.
As General Secretary
today,
of the NDC?
If elections were held today.
Looking at the margin of loss that you had.
I'm saying that if we are to go for elections today, the story will be different. Okay. So you see, it is, fair-minded people, tolerant people who build democracy. It is not democracy that generates fair-minded and tolerant people. So if you want to build a democracy, you ought to be tolerant. Particularly at every material moment, you have to put the interests of the nation above your party's interests before you come to your personal interests. We had every reason not to accept this result and to demand certain things, but we decided to keep quiet.
Okay.
Because you remember that in the course of collation, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission herself announced that their system had been tampered with. So everybody felt that, well, if it were MPP, I'm sure after that statement, even if Jesus Christ had descended, they wouldn't have accepted the defeat. But we said that, well, this is Ghana. Ghana is bigger than everybody, and the democratic credentials we have earned make all of us proud. So let us, concede and move along. And we thought that there will be a review of the elections. 2016 stands out as the only general election which has not been reviewed by Electoral Commission and the IPAC.
To date?
Till date. It has not been reviewed. And as we sit here now, we couldn't exercise any right to go to court or anything because the results, the presidential results, the last time I checked, has still not been gazetted. But the law says that it gives a period for you to go to court, disgruntled people to go to court after the gazetting. As we speak to you now, the last time I checked, the presidential results had not been gazetted. You understand? And every attempt we have made to call for a review had fallen on deaf ears. And in fact, perhaps the government knew that the review we were demanding will be conceded and IPAC will go into it. They didn't know whatever the review was going to generate. Then before anybody could rest, they stampeded the Electoral Commission with petitions for the removal of this, removal of that, and so on. So around that time, there couldn't be any review. Now, when this new team came on board, we started demanding that review. As we sit here, that review has not happened. In fact, in the past where the commission itself had not spoken, we still did a review to find out which parts of our systems worked well, which part needed to be improved, and so on. Nothing has happened. So we are all operating in darkness. You understand? And this new group has come, and we are preparing for another election without any review about what happened in the past.
General, hold on for me, because when we return from our final break, I will ask him about the new EC. The NDC seems very unhappy. We'll ask him about whether they indeed intend to go to court over a new voters register. Keep watching Face to Face.
Every weekday at 8 p.m., City Newsroom brings you analysis of the major news stories of the day. In-depth, comprehensive, and researched. It's 1 hour of local and international news from 8 to 9 p.m. It's the City Newsroom. Weekdays on City TV.
We enter the final hurdle of our interview with the General Secretary of the NDC, Asiedu Nketia. Now, General, there's a new EC in place. You are not very happy about the process that led to a change in EC. That much is in the public. But is the NDC deliberately making the job of Madam Jean Mensah difficult? Almost every month there seems to be a press release from the NDC complaining about something that this new EC has done.
It tells you that almost every month wrong decisions are taken. And so long as wrong decisions keep on being taken, we can only fight for the correct things to be done. So that's all about it.
New voters register.
We haven't discussed anything about new voters register, but
you said you were at IPAC. It was brought up there.
No, there was nothing about new voters register at all. In fact, the IPAC, I didn't participate in that IPAC. That day we were engaged on some peace talks elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But our representatives participated. And the whole meeting was about the program for 2019. Okay. So the program didn't even have space for what will happen in 2020 to be discussed at all. It wasn't on agenda, it wasn't on anything. I'm told that the possibility of a new voters register was mentioned in passing when an EC member was answering some question. Understand? So how it found itself in the communique as one of the issues that had been discussed exhaustively and endorsed was a miracle to us. And that's how we complained. And EC came to concede and apologize. So if you want to find out why we are talking, just listen to the responses of EC. The first time we were not invited properly to a meeting which were entitled to attend upon proper invitation. We raised it. You consider it as making noise. But they came out to apologize. You understand? So would you call that noise making? Then they went into attempt to do this limited registration in referendum affected areas. We complained that the system they were using and all that were not even based on any of our laws. And it was a new thing. The equipment they wanted to use were not intended for a limited registration. They were intended for continuous registration. So the workload that it has to carry in limited registration, the system was not designed for that. So let's go back to our biometric registration kits. They didn't. They refused. And so they went into the limited registration, expecting to capture the names of more than 100,000 first-time voters. They ended up capturing 47,000. And yet they came out congratulating themselves that they had done a wonderful exercise which has been successful. And so we had to come out to define what success means to them. Okay. Because we cannot, by any stretch of imagination, say that you write exam, you have 47 out of over 100, and you are congratulating yourself as successful. And they are insisting on repeating the same thing for the limited registration nationwide. And that's how we are complaining that, look, you have tried this one. If you didn't know, that's a different matter. But you know, you have tried it, and this was the experience. It was a disaster. And you want to replicate that disaster, nationwide, then there must be something wrong with your, your competence. That's why we are making this noise, and we'll continue making that noise until the right things are done. Because we are going into district assembly elections, coupled with a referendum at the same election. So that election is very, very important. And Article 42 of the Constitution gives every Ghanaian the right to be registered to vote. Already you are thinking about sending registration kits into foreign lands, searching for Ghanaians to register. So what makes you think that the Ghanaians inside here are less important than those outside there, so that you would find a way of deliberately disenfranchising 53% of people who are qualified to vote. You disenfranchise them here, and then you pick equipment to go around globe-trotting looking for Ghanaians to register outside. What type of logic is that? Okay. So we said that, look, register everybody. So the laws, the CI that governs registration in Ghana, of voters in Ghana, is very, very clear. It has no space for this online registration that they are experimenting with at all. They need to take the registration to the electoral areas, because district assembly elections, unit committee elections are about electoral areas and polling stations. So you can't say people should move from there. Everybody in the constituency should move to district center. And even it is not all the districts that have the equipment. It is the old districts that have the equipment. Some of the districts that were created later on by the Mahama administration, some still don't have. And the ones that have been added by President Akufo-Addo, they all don't have that equipment. So what will happen is that they will all have to move to their parent districts to go and queue and register. Look at places like Bole, where to move from Bamboy to Bole, you will be covering close to 90 kilometers. And you are expecting poor voters from their villages finding money to hire vehicles and move to district center. Go to Afram Place, north, where you have to cross the lake, islands and all that. All of them should move from all those islands to come to Donkokrum to register. What type of commission is this? So I don't know. It seems to me that this cannot be attributable to only incompetence. There may be some hidden agenda that we are yet to know, because it beats everybody's imagination that anybody will be announcing such an exercise. So let's wait and see how it goes.
Well, before I go, General, I was telling you, you are a very busy man who seems to find time for a lot of things. He's written a book. He calls it My Experiments with Community Development, the case of Nkramine Secondary School. What were you doing with
this one? When I was assemblyman, I promised that I would, by the end of the first year of my being in the assembly, we will establish a secondary school in my community. And this was a pronouncement I made on the common platform for the district assembly. So immediately after my election, I set up to organize for a day secondary school to be established. By God's grace, I was able to do it. And now, as we speak now, it's one of the biggest secondary schools in Brong-Ahafo.
Wow.
I didn't intend it to be a major project, but it is very, very important, particularly for assembly men or potential assemblymen or unit committee men. It has a lot about how to mobilize community for development.
All right, so thank you very much, the Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia. I have my copy of the book, My Experiments with Community Development, the case of Nkramine Secondary School. And he says if you want a copy, just come to the office of the NDC, or you can go to the Flamingo bookshop and easily pick up one. So once again, General, thank you so much for coming on
it's my
Face to Face. I'm sure you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Keep watching Face to Face. My name is Godfred Akoto Boafo. Have a good day.